Yo, what a deal. I go with the name of Danny Pacheco, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of the Big T Debate. Now, if you're not so familiar with what goes down on this platform, we pretty much just talk about everything that is related to music and pop culture. And a little zeo, kabozon. Titsamisana le moya how the spirits out. Then I suggest for you to just lounge and not make any plans because I got a whole lot to talk about, especially when it comes to like the music stuff. We've definitely been going through some weird stuff. There's a lot of weird energy in the game right now, and low Tom, I guess not Tom a guy. But I'd like to say one thing though, we have to do better as dudes. Like just scoping through Twitter and the stuff that's been happening these past couple of weeks slash days. I want to get proud the guy. No, I mean, malo, when I get tweet, scrolling through, and boom, the most unlikely, and I could also say likely person to trend is Prince Kaybee. I see Prince Kaybee on the timeline and I'm like, yo, it's hang about what? And then as I continuously just go through and try to do my research and, background check of what is actually going down and what actually caused this dude to trend, and it made me really feel bad as a dude because like I feel like we are constantly just taking L's as guys and we have to do better. And let me tell you one thing that really touched me about this whole Prince KB thing is like when you look at this whole thing in terms of like a whole cycle, it takes one guy to mess up, and when one guy messes up, it will lamon. I feel like I'm a nice dude, and I'm not saying that I'm the only dude that gets touched by what Prince KB does. Mara, when you look at it in hindsight, especially if you are a nice guy looking at this right now, awesome buzor tavet Iran. It's may sana loy na pila. Armai zevala by dealership if I know dealer spec 10,000 spec in a year or whatever the body count is. Reno focus on what happens when a dude decides to be an ass to his girlfriend. It kind of mixes up the whole thing in the food chain because like what I say wale kirnara stragela. I don't know when I pull up and try pull on my whole Shakespeare thingy to these girls and I do it, all of a sudden I seem too good to be true or I sound like a player. And sometimes there's certain things that you can't really avoid, like me being good with words. Can tweak it, can I don't avoid that, but then it has like this whole double sword effect to it because like on one hand you are a good dude, and on the other hand you're also a good dude suffering from what these bad guys are doing. And just scrolling through Twitter and just seeing these tweets, man, and this dude is apologizing for cheating on his girlfriend, and then on the other hand the girl that he was cheating on his girlfriend with, she found the receipt or the man ganan to why bona conversation guy. And then it ended up for them to get to a point where obviously they are doing what they were doing, being busy. But what touched me the most is the fact that okay, this dude is apologizing, and it was hard not for me not to think about Katleho, my boy's situation, the insurance student, and how these two situations are pretty similar in terms of like what is at stake. You are a big brand, you're working with big brands, and it's really hard for you not to really get to a point where you see that okay, my actions at a later stage are gonna affect my personal life. And that's what happened with that situation with Katleho, my boy. And when Prince KB apologized, I started realizing, okay, maybe it may not have been necessary for him to apologize, but the fact that he's got a whole lot of things on the line, it made complete sense, even though a lot of people were clashing with that tweet alone. Like, yo, why are you apologizing? Because it's your personal life. It's not like he did something really bad, but it is bad because, I'm not championing for people to just be out here cheating on their goals. I mean, you could tell, like, that 1 minute rant that I just had, just pretty much is just trying to cover my own image in the sense of, nice guys deserve to get something. But, like, I don't know Prince TV that well to say nice guys deserve to get something, right? I'm just saying, whatever Prince KB does, it ruins everything else for all the other dudes who are trying to get something, man. I've been let me just leave. Let me just leave everything related to my personal life right now. But yeah, that was really a tricky situation to be honest. And besides me just questioning whether if it was a good thing for him to just apologize, Another thing that I feel like we need to get to a point in pretty much is trying to make this whole situation better. That is, regarding our relationships with these brands, is just for us to start discussing like, yo, can we get other ways in which I could at least try a bit to just live my life without you guys forever hounding me for, the little things that I do outside of like the work that we do. Because I understand it's a business relationship and I carry the brand's name wherever I go, but it needs to get to a point where at least like, I don't feel like I'm in jail. And even when I look at like, big acts like, your AK and Cassper, it's like more or less like the same thing. It's like when these guys were gearing up to fight each other, the other dude on the other end was like, yo, nabila bila, it's already money, uruile maka, and I want to try my best not to just beat this dude and just keep it calm because he knew what was on the line. Whereas with AKA, that dude's just been known for just doing the most reckless things in the past. And even current days, he's been doing a whole lot of reckless stuff. But like somehow these brands still keep with him. I don't know if it's because of like, the equity that his name carries or what. But then it's much more easier for him to just be reckless and do some things, knock a job. But then, whereas you have people like Cassper having to tread carefully because, well, he knows what's on the line. It's like the weirdest and most trickiest situation. Anyone just thinking about that whole imaging thing that I've been talking about for a bit now, it's hard for me to just not think about situation ya Kwesta, Makwa, Nota, they by Raplyf, and also just this Leroy dude that we don't know but happens to be managing Big Zulu now. It's like everything that Kwesta was doing that led up to this situation that is now a point where everything is blown up seems a bit pointless, because like when you think about Mac G's podcast, Dima Nazama everything in his power to protect his image and also the people that were involved there, Raplyf. Like he was trying the hardest not to taint anyone's image and also just protect his image in the same length. But somehow one has to die. Like I've seen this happen countless times with other individuals. It's really hard for you to just balance between this brand that you work for, this company that you work for, and also just keeping your whole personal life intact. I understand like he was just really trying to make sure that what we know that is Kwesta today is something that's not going to change tomorrow in terms of, okay, if the allegations that were to pop up that, okay, Bila, this whole thing of like people claiming that, okay, Nota's the guilty party is not true. What if Kwesta in himself is actually, guilty? Because like now, this other girl that just came up on Instagram, I forgot who her name was, but she was one of these artists. I think she might be an artist or a songwriter that contributed to some of the songs there, or an actual song on the Dakar 2 album. And she's claiming that she never got paid royalties, And then you also have Makwa also, who's a guy who's just been crying on IG Live for the longest. Before that, this dude was dealing with what seemed to be something that might have turned into suicide, Like he was considering taking his life because that's how hard the situation hit him, And you would think to yourself like, yo, in as much as like, I worked with these dudes, I had some sort of fellowship with them. I have to just protect what is mine and what is my own, which is like, I have to look after my own kids. So eventually someone had to come out and, start talking and sharing their sides of the story. And which is why we're here now. Because now, split sheets there, I saw some page on YouTube where, they were revealing all these figures. It really didn't seem too legit of a split sheet. Because Ashifa can't say it's the normal and whatever, but you can get like a whole idea and image of like, okay, this is what whoever signed those split sheets, this is like the whole perspective on what he thinks is the right thing to do in terms of like who is deserving, in terms of like, okay, over mo fa 12%, estate ya Brenda Fasio Grabogana, spirit chasers le one velo Grabogan. Why one? Because me just talking about that makes me think about Lona situation in Mekwa, Lenota. We're not so sure who's guilty, who's actually telling the truth. But like, if I were to revert to what I was talking about before, we can't just do business and also think about people who have other things that are going on in their lives in terms of like, they have families, they have kids that they have to feed, And even just the whole energy surrounding just the SA music business is like the heaviest of all things, because like me trying to bring this whole thing to a close becomes more difficult, because like I see the whole Raplyf situation, but now I'm thinking about other things that are lingering with regards to the whole imaging thing, and that is, AKA, and what's actually going down with the now deceased Nelli Tembe and their whole situation. Me just going through Twitter yesterday, actually these past 2 days, is like I've been having this weird roller coaster in terms of like trying to interpret all the information that I've been seeing, And obviously there's someone from Nelly's side, because I saw an article on Sowetan, Ebola Kore Moto Nalika information happens to be part of like Nelly's circle, and she was like a close friend to Nelly. So her leaking those images and those videos, maybe this is something that she's trying to put towards people in terms of like revealing the other side of what we never really knew in terms of their relationship. That is, Nelly and AK's relationship. And the tricky thing about all these images that I saw online, the videos they gave warning, is like, how do I break this whole thing down, and how do I consolidate it to a point where at least, I have a full-on understanding of what's going on? Because one end, in terms of like the screenshots, you could see clearly, like, it's really hard to just go past what you see in those screenshots and not say that, okay, there's a high chance that AKA is actually guilty for what he's doing, And then on the other end also, there's another screenshot that was pretty much just detailing a conversation that AKA had with Nelly's dad. And Nelly's dad was talking about how Nelly's always been dramatic as a kid. And it makes me wonder if the whole claim about her being a depressed individual is true. Then it goes to show that all these years that she's been overly dramatic and just trying to get her dad's attention, her dad in himself didn't look through that whole situation and see, okay, Mara, my kid is actually suffering. There's something that she's actually going through that I'm not seeing. Because like it's really easy for someone to just bypass something that looks like, whereas it's just someone actually crying out for help. And there's another video that also came out where AKA was pretty much just like taking clips and pictures of everything that went down at the hotel. I'm not sure if it's at the hotel where the whole scene happened, but what he was saying in the video was that, I'm taking this video as proof just to show that, just in case we go to court, just know that I didn't fight back. And this person was actually having another episode. She was trying to fall off the building, So that whole situation in itself is really tricky, which is why I feel like I need your help in pretty much just trying to find a way in which how we can interpret this whole thing. So I'm pretty much welcoming anyone who's wanting to actually comment on this whole thing via the comment section. Like, feel free to just hit me up even via IG, which is at the Big T Debate, and just let us know how you feel about that whole situation. But seeing that we got that out the way, I feel like it's only right for us to just talk about the lighter side of things. It's like, everything that I've been talking about right now is really heavy, And I feel like, this is a time for us to at least celebrate what's been going on in the scene in terms of music. We've been getting a whole lot of music since, lockdown happened. And I just wanted to shed light on a couple of artists that I feel like are actually doing the greatest of all things, And speaking of people who are doing the greatest of all things, I don't know if you know about this boy who's doing things, Reece. He's dropping a tape with some dude from the States called Joey Fats. And just last week, we got a single called Where You At. And, me just listening to that whole single in itself made me reflect on his journey. Pretty much it's like, post ambitious, him gathering a team up, working with Mash Beats and all these dudes with TWC, and for him to get to the point that he is right now. Because I remember when he dropped this mixtape, Today's Tragedy, Tomorrow's Memory, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, we finally got the album that we've been wanting to hear from this kid, man. Like, we've always known rap. But like, it felt like, he was just downplaying it or trying to find a balance between Should I give these people like, some songs that I know I can perform, songs that I can do well on the radio, and also just, balancing it out in terms of like on the other end, at least say where I'm actually portraying my style, which is like me being a rapper. And that's what I actually liked about that song, because it took me back to then. So I can only just be hopeful that this tape in itself is gonna do more for him, besides just like him showcasing his talent, which is him being really strong on the pen, but like him obviously just crossing borders and merging these relationships globally. So that's gonna be something that's really dope to see. And another cat that I've been watching and following that I think is really dope in these current times is Blxckie. I remember seeing on Twitter not so long ago people talking about how, hey, I guess sure pila ready for album, yeah, Blxckie. I'm like, what do you mean you're not ready for an album, yeah, Blxckie? And then people like, I feel like for him to just say he's dropping an album is like a bit too soon. And for me, I feel like, he is what's been missing. We've been having a lot of artists coming into the game, dropping music, but some of it was not really exciting because it really feels like a reference of something that you've heard before. But it's really hard for me to just, think about Blxckie and say, oh, I've heard this before, because of how versatile he is. I mean, he dropped Big Time Slapper, which is now, I think, doing like 900K on YouTube. And then he came back with another song, Uppity, and then I was doing like fairly good too. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm not so sure what to expect from this dude. And then he dropped another single, which was like a visualizer to some R&B song. And I was like, okay, cool. This kid actually has, different facets. It's not like he's just a rapper only. I feel like he could exist in all these spaces where he could sing. He could, give you songs to bop to, in terms of like, if you want him to get these songs that are being played on radio, or like something that you could listen to while he's performing. He has all that, so I can only just be excited, to just hear what's going to be dropping to the game, And, he also just talked about how he's going to be dropping a single with Nasty C. I had the privilege of actually just seeing on these IG lives that he had, and he was pretty much just previewing the song. It's going to be really exciting to hear. And, I think it wouldn't be as dope. I wouldn't be doing that much of a justice if I'm just talking about all the fellas in the game, highlighting the dope things that the women are actually doing in the game. And Elaine, finally, she decided that she's also going to drop a music video to that song right now that I was talking about just last week. And I think a positive that I could draw from this whole thing, in as much as like I did mention last week that a lot of people are going to be attacking me for saying what I said, but I'm really happy that, Drake and Sample are on that song. So if you needed any confirmation that, oh, but that IG live, it said Sample and Drake are going to be on the song, this is that confirmation, because like it's not seeming like she's going to get that feature. But I know in the future, obviously, because just how talented she is, it's heading towards that direction. I mean, you can't be signing with Colombia and not manifesting these features. And I think they're going to come. But for now, I'm really liking what she's doing now, just hearing her alone on the song, So if she just keep on doing that for a while before she gives us those Drake features, those Beyonce features, those Sanford features, I'm good with it right now. And just to wrap up, Shakana dropped an album too, Trouble in Paradise. Really dope album. You'll make what you want to make out of that album, because like for me, I feel like it just makes sense, for someone to just be out the game for a good 3 years and drop a dope album like she did. There's nothing that I can even say more. I can't complain. I'm really satisfied with like just the length of the album. It's like a 12 to 13 track album. And another thing that I feel like is really dope about Shakan is just the fact that she's genre fluid. You put her on a pop song, she kills it. You put her on a house song, she kills it. You put her on an R&B song, she kills it. So a big shout out to Shakana for that. And I think that's where we're going to wrap this whole thing up. And, I feel like we've been talking about a whole lot of things this week, or just highlighting everything that's been happening last week and also this week. So I just want to say a big shout out to you for tuning in. If you are returning, please do me a favor by telling all your peoples that, this podcast is really where it's at, and, people should subscribe. And, lastly, I still go by the name of Danny Pacheco, and you are tuned into the Big T Debate, or this was the Big T Debate. Peace.